Hi, I'm Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com, and today we're going to go over the winning warm-ups and methodology. There are a lot of different reasons why I stumbled across being able to do this and what it did, but now it's funny because we have a lot of pro teams and college teams and high school teams that are using this, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, so we're gonna go back a little bit, almost 10 years. 2012, I hit my first 600 raw bench, which put me at the top 15 of all time in bench press. Back in 2012, there were only a handful of dudes that had done 600, and even furthermore, there were only a handful of dudes that had done 600 after squatting some type of major weight. So 2013, I go to my first raw competition thinking I got 600 or plus in the bag in the bench. I worked really hard on my squat and my deadlift and brought those up. And then what I found is when I went to the meet and did my first raw competition in 2013, that 600 bench was no longer there. The squat had decimated my bench press strength due to my conditioning level being too low. Now, that's kind of odd because when I go home to the competition, you know, my first thought process, like all of us, was I need to get stronger. And then as I sat down and looked at my program, and I sat down and looked at all the stuff I'd done in the last 15 years to get that strong, I started to realize that maybe strength wasn't the answer. Maybe getting in condition was the right answer. So the first thing I thought of was pre-fatigue. But next, I'm gonna show you all the different steps that why I invented winning warm-ups, why they work so well, and the pre-fatiguing was only the start of what actually made it work. So as I started doing some more research, I started to come across this term called potentiation. Now, I'm gonna give you the meathead definition. You can go look it up for yourself. Increasing strength of neural pathways previously used. So what does that mean? That means if I use muscle groups that I want to innervate into that core lift, a bench press, a squat, a deadlift, if I warm them up, the chances of me utilizing those muscles, the injury rate going down, and the performance of that lift going up are heightened dramatically. Now, obviously, if we're gonna potentiate, we're going to pre-fatigue, right? We're gonna train hamstrings before deadlifts or squats. We're gonna train the abs before deadlifts or squats. We're gonna train maybe 100 reps of triceps before we bench press. But over time, if those weights are selected correctly and the rate of perceived exertion is selected correctly to only potentiate, we actually increase the amount of weight that we can lift in that core lift after a warm-up. So I get asked all the time, well, Matt, when you do these winning warm-ups, doesn't it neglect or start to hurt the core lift? And the answer is, with a trained person that knows what he's doing, it actually makes it better. Okay, because of potentiation. So if you understand the definition of why you do potentiation, right, we're increasing neural pathways to these particular muscle groups, we're gonna start understanding that this is actually a way to lift more weights, not less weights. The reason that a lot of people don't like to do it or are unfamiliar with it or stray away is because it's more freaking work, right? But at the end of the day, you wanna put the work in the right areas to get better, and potentiation is one way to do that. The next big thing that we have to start thinking about is increasing ligament and tendon density. When we push the volume up to 25 reps, we're actually causing more blood flow, thicker and stronger tendons, and all this soft tissue insurance. So when we go super heavy, we have more framework in order for us to not get hurt, right? We don't want to put a Corvette engine in a stock Malibu and twist the chassis. We want a strong frame with a strong engine. If you try to do one or the other, you're going to have a big problem. Well, what I noticed is doing 4 sets of 25 with winning warm-ups, you're up at that higher rep range where ligament and tendon density is kind of crucial, but you're also specifically conditioning the muscle groups that are going to use that day. Now, this gets really important because we got to focus on weaknesses, meaning that if I want my triceps to be the main presser, and we got to think about this for a second, there is data that shows now that the triceps become the main presser in maximal effort bench pressing. Okay, but everybody still thinks that building a big chest and shoulders is gonna make a big bench. And the answer is, that's kind of true, but you wanna do it secondarily. You don't wanna do it primarily because of the injury rates. You hear a lot of times in normal gyms, ow, I hurt my shoulder when I benched. I can't bench anymore because I have torn rotator cuffs. Very rarely do you hear, I can't bench anymore because I tore my tricep off my elbow. It does happen, but it's not that common. And the reason is because you need to make the triceps the main presser. It's a hinge joint. It can take way more pressure than the shoulder, which is a ball and socket joint. So we want to specifically condition the tricep and the lat and all the muscles on the back side of the body to withstand not only the support system, but also take over the pressing power due to that potentiation to allow us to press bigger and stronger weights. And it all comes from ligament tendon density and activating the right muscles before you do the core lift. The next thing that Wenning warm-ups really do that's kind of an underlying secret is we enhance or increase temperature at the muscle tissue. Now what that's going to do is if a muscle's hotter, it tends to be more pliable, therefore less common to get hurt. But there's another little trick, and I actually learned this by listening to Charlie Francis. Now Charlie Francis used to train Ben Johnson, and he was the fastest 100-meter runner in the 80s and had the world record until Usain Bolt came and beat it, okay? The point is that Charlie Francis was on to some really crazy shit. He was actually preheating Ben Johnson's quadriceps, glutes, and hamstrings with heat packs. And his theory is that if the muscle was hotter, the neural pathway had an easier way to get to the muscle, therefore the muscle contraction speed and strength were much higher. So if we do that with actual work, we can get some of that physical temperature up, and now the muscle tissue, the spinal cord is going to be able to light it up hotter. It's going to have a hotter spark plug. So that's the other reason I really, really like Wenning warm-ups is we're increasing temperature, which hopefully is going to reduce injury, and it's going to increase performance due to that neurological speediness because the temperature is hotter. So the next and last thing that Wenning warm-ups is really used for that I figured out and initially thought was just pre-fatigue is that I was actually increasing my physical fitness, or what most people call in the top levels, general physical preparedness, or GPP. Now, if I'm doing this warm-up of 3 exercises, 4 sets of 25 at an RPE that's very regulated and pretty easy, but with 0 rest, my heart rate's going to go up 135, 145, and I'm going to sustain that for 15 straight minutes before I even start my core lift. Now, what is that going to do over time? One, it makes me nearly impossible to get tired. So my initial thought process on Wenning warm-ups is if I pre-fatigue myself pre-bench press, pre-core lift bench press, that no matter how much I do squatting, it's not going to affect that 600-pound bench. And actually, I was right. So the next meet I go to in 2014, I break the all-time world record in sleeves only in squats at 832, which was 826 for like 20 years. And I benched 606, and I should have took like 622. It was like, pow! And the only thing I was doing different is I was pre-fatiguing what I thought were increasing physical fitness on the bench. I had no idea about potentiation or the other stuff of heating the muscle. I learned that later. But what I thought, and why I put this last, was because I think that this is the last thing it does. It's not the first thing. The potentiation is most important. The physical fitness of what it increases allows me to do something insanely hard, like a big world record squat, and then still have a massive 600-pound bench press after that monster squat. Because why? I'm in shape enough to get strong. So wrapping back up, what we're talking about here is that you're gonna have to get more fit to get strong, but sometimes that's not our first thought process. So when I initially started the Wenning warm-up, I thought, well, I'm gonna get in better shape before I bench press, so that way after I squat, my bench press doesn't get affected, and that worked. But what I found was the 2 other things became humongous properties for reducing injuries in fire departments, reducing injuries in the military, and getting guys stronger without having a lot of different mileage. Now, this is the other big trick, is that Wenning warm-ups, as you know, with the potentiation and what we talked about, it's actually making form better without teaching technique. So you think about it, if I have weak hamstrings, I'm gonna squat like I have weak hamstrings. If you do 100 reps of hamstring curls 2 times a week before every lower body day, I guarantee you in 6 months to a year, your hamstrings will not be nearly as weak, and your form in your core lift will actually get better based on the fact that you have new muscle tissue that you have potentiated before the core lift. So I hope that you start utilizing Wenning warm-ups like a lot of pro teams and college teams are doing, and we've been doing for nearly 10 years. And I hope that this information gives you a new outlook on how and why you should use these in your training.